Hey there, sleepy soul. Welcome to Sleepy Love Notes, the perfect place to wind down, relax, and let your dreams take flight. I'm so glad you're here. Before we begin this cozy little journey, could you do me a small favor? Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us keep the sleepy stories coming. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Alright, now let's get you nice and cozy. Take a deep, calming breath in and slowly let it out. Let the world fade away as your mind gently drifts into this story. You're safe here, you're loved, and your dreams are waiting for you. Let's begin. Tonight, we'll step softly into the haunting quiet of a small town, tucked deep in the summer forests of Maine, a place called Jerusalem's Lot, or, as the locals whisper, Salem's Lot. This is the story of a town that once felt safe, a town of clapboard houses, white picket fences, and small talk on porch swings, a place where secrets sleep just beneath the surface, beneath the floorboards, beneath the soil, beneath memory itself. The book we're exploring tonight is Salem's Lot, written by Stephen King in the quiet of 1975. You may know King for his darker tales, the kind that chase shadows across the walls, but here we'll take a gentler path. We'll walk with soft steps, like a whisper through fallen leaves. This version is not here to frighten you, but to lead you slowly, safely, into the hush of twilight. Salem's Lot is a story of homecoming, of haunted memories, and of the things that live in the silence between heartbeats. It is part horror, part mystery, and deeply human at its core. It invites us to ask, what happens when the ordinary turns quietly strange? When the familiar bends slightly, until it's no longer what it once seemed? At the center of the story is Ben Mears, a writer returning to his childhood town, seeking peace and maybe a little redemption. But the town he left is not quite the one he finds. There are new faces, old fears, and an ancient house that seems to breathe in the dark. We will move slowly through the chapters, one by one, letting the story unfold like a dream remembered just before waking. You'll meet Susan, kind and curious, Mark, sharp and brave beyond his years, and Father Callahan, whose faith will be tested like never before. You'll wander through quiet streets, peek into shadowed windows, and feel the gentle pull of something waiting just beyond the edge of night. But don't worry, sleepy soul. We won't rush. We'll stay soft, like candlelight in the dark. This is not a tale to fear, but a story to float through, like autumn mist curling around old gravestones, like the hush of an empty house. There are echoes. Yes, there is mystery, but also memory and meaning and the warmth of holding on to each other when the night feels long. So snuggle in. Let your blanket be your shield. Let your pillow cradle your thoughts. Let your eyes grow heavy as we begin this quiet journey to Salem's Lot. Prologue, the Marston House. The story begins not in the town itself, but far away, in the warm dust of the American Southwest. Two travelers move quietly beneath a wide, endless sky. A man and a boy, their connection silent but strong. They drift from town to town, unremarkable on the surface. Yet beneath their calm routines, something stirs, something they carry in secret. The man, older, wearied by time and thought, has the look of someone who has seen too much, and the boy, perhaps 9 or 10, has eyes filled with the deep, watchful knowing of someone who's lived through shadows. They are not fleeing exactly, but neither are they free. In motels with sun-faded curtains, the man writes in longhand. He fills pages with memory, slow, steady, capturing pieces of a past he cannot forget. The boy watches, quiet and still, his gaze often turned toward the fading light of dusk. They share silence like others share words, and together they carry the weight of a place left behind. That place is Jerusalem's lot. A little town in Maine, not marked on most maps. A town the boy once called home. But it is more than just a name or a dot in the countryside. It is a feeling, a chill in the bones, a whisper in the dark. When the boy speaks of it, it's with reverence and fear. He refers to it only as the lot. And when he dreams of windows that won't stay shut, of wind whistling through floorboards, of a house at the top of a hill, with broken shutters and a story no one tells. That house is called the Marston House, and it is the reason they ran. It is the reason the man writes each night, capturing what they saw, what they felt. The boy senses it too. He sometimes wakes in the dark, sitting upright, eyes wide, as if something far away has stirred. Still the days pass, seasons change. The boy begins to smile again, in tiny ways, at clouds shaped like animals, at the way sunlight hits a glass of water. The man begins to write more freely, as if the story he holds is nearing its end. But neither of them forget, and both of them know, someday, they will have to return, not out of courage or revenge, but for closure, for peace, for the simple, quiet truth that some doors must be shut properly, sealed with fire, with memory, with the final act of letting go. And so the prologue ends, like a breath held between past and future, a quiet promise of a story just beginning, a story hidden in shadows and starlight, a story waiting in the bones of Salem's lot. Chapter 1. Ben returns. The town of Jerusalem's lot sits nestled among the trees of western Maine, as if cradled by the earth itself. The roads leading in are narrow and winding, lined with tall maples and whispering pines. It's the kind of place where time moves slowly, where the same names have been carved into mailboxes for generations, where the wind carries stories, and sometimes secrets. And now, a man returns. Ben Mears is his name, a writer with thoughtful eyes and a quiet air of sadness. He drives into town alone, a small suitcase in the trunk and a notebook beside him, pages fluttering softly in the breeze from the open window. He hasn't been back in decades, but something inside him, a pull he couldn't ignore, has brought him home. Ben parks in the center of town, stepping out beneath the familiar blue sky. He stands for a long moment, just breathing. Everything looks smaller than he remembered, and yet heavier somehow, like the town has aged in place. He walks with slow steps, reacquainting himself with the sights and sounds. The sun warms the sidewalks. Children's voices echo faintly from a nearby playground. He sees faces that feel half remembered, older now, but marked by the same expressions. But Ben isn't here for nostalgia. He's here for a reason, and that reason looms at the edge of his thoughts: the Marston House. It rises at the top of a hill, watching the town like a patient sentinel. Peeling paint, broken windows, and a crooked porch. Even from a distance, it seems to breathe. Ben saw something there long ago, something that left a crack in his memory, wide enough to echo for years. He stops by the boarding house, a cozy place run by the kind and chatty Eva Miller. She welcomes him with warmth and curiosity, remembering his name from his books. Ben smiles politely, brushing off the fame that never quite fit him. He takes a room on the second floor with a view that looks out over the trees. As he settles in, he begins to write again. His fingers move across the page with new purpose. Something in this place has stirred his imagination, or perhaps his fear. He's not sure which yet, but the words come and he lets them. Later, at the park, Ben meets a young woman named Susan Norton. She sits on a bench beneath an old elm tree, reading one of his novels. Their meeting is quiet, natural, like two pieces falling into place. Susan has an easy smile and curious eyes. She recognizes him quickly, but speaks to him not as a fan, but as someone who wants to know the man behind the stories. They talk of books, of writing, of what it means to come home. There's something effortless in the way they speak, the kind of ease that only happens when two souls quietly recognize each other. Ben finds himself drawn to her, not just her beauty, but the calm confidence she carries. She tells him of her life in the lot, of her hopes and quiet frustrations. He listens deeply, and for the first time in a long while, he feels less alone. As evening falls and they part ways, Ben walks back to his room with the faintest sense of hope blooming inside him. The town still holds its shadows, but there is also warmth here, kindness, connection, and yet, as he gazes up at the dark silhouette of the Marston house against the dusky sky, he feels it again, that quiet pull, that strange old fear. It's not the past, he realizes. It's the present. The house is waiting, but for tonight, the wind is gentle, and the stars shimmer quietly over Salem's lot. Chapter 2. Quiet streets, quiet strangers. Morning comes to Jerusalem's lot, not with a roar, but a hush. The sun rises gently over the rooftops, casting golden light on dew-damp grass and chimneys, still exhaling sleep. The town stretches itself, awake, slow, comfortable, unaware that anything is stirring beneath its painted porches and quiet lawns. Children head off to school with lunchboxes swinging. Shopkeepers lift the blinds, unlock the doors. Coffee brews behind counter glass as the regulars gather in the diner, murmuring greetings over steaming mugs. It's just another morning, at least on the surface, but small things are shifting. Ben Mears wakes early, sunlight creeping through the lace curtains of his room at Eva Miller's boarding house. The birdsong outside is sweet, familiar, yet oddly fragile. He writes again. Notes, fragments of memory, sketches of the Marston house, trying to capture the shape of a feeling too vague to name. Later, Ben walks the town, speaking with old faces, some surprised to see him again, others not remembering him at all. He finds the local library and meets Matt Burke, a thoughtful high school teacher with a deep love of books and a keen mind. Matt is curious about Ben's work, and even more curious when Ben mentions the Marston house. There's something between them, an unspoken recognition of shared curiosity, maybe even unease. Meanwhile, across town, preparations are quietly underway. A man named Richard Straker has arrived, neatly dressed, silver-haired, formal in manner. He is opening an antique store in the old Spencer building, and though polite, there is something about him that doesn't quite fit. He speaks in clipped tones, answers questions vaguely, and never offers more than what's asked. But it's his partner, Mr. Barlow, that no one has seen. Straker explains that Barlow is still abroad. traveling, acquiring rare items for their shop. He assures the townsfolk that he will arrive soon, very soon. They say little more. And the building they've rented, the old narrow storefront on Jointner Avenue, remains locked most of the time, windows covered in thick brown paper. Still, curiosity stirs. People peer through the cracks. Whispers begin. Susan Norton and Ben meet again, this time for coffee in a small cafe with sun-warmed windows. Their conversation deepens, moving from books and towns to dreams and fears. Ben tells her, gently, of his childhood in the lot, of the time he entered the Marston house on a dare, of what he saw there, or thought he saw, a man hanging from the rafters, a feeling of something watching him even after he ran. Susan listens, thoughtful. She doesn't laugh. She doesn't flinch. She simply nods, as if she too understands that some places, remember, elsewhere, life continues. Ruthie Crockett argues with her husband over bills. Parkins Gillespie, the constable, drives his patrol route with lazy familiarity. At the dump, Dud Rogers talks to himself and feeds the rats, his voice echoing across rusted metal and broken glass. But the heart of the town beats on, gently, rhythmically, unaware. And up on the hill, the Marston house waits. Its windows remain dark. Its porch creaks softly in the wind. No one has moved in. And yet, sometimes at night, a dim light flickers behind the curtains. Sometimes a shape passes near the window, too tall for comfort, too still for sleep. Sometimes a dog barks once sharply and then falls silent, and no one asks why. For now, the sun still shines. The leaves whisper their secrets to the breeze, and Salem's lot continues on, one quiet breath at a time. Chapter 3. Settling Shadows. Jerusalem's. Lot begins to adjust, as small towns often do, to new presences, to whispers, to change. The antique store on Jointner Avenue officially opens its doors. Straker's Fine Antiques, the sign says in careful gold leaf lettering. Simple, elegant, and strangely timeless. The shop smells of oiled wood and age, and inside one finds curious things. Tarnished clocks that do not tick, mirrors that seem too dark around the edges, silverware engraved with unfamiliar initials. Straker stands behind the counter, calm and composed. He greets visitors politely, but never smiles. He sells little, asks less, and still, something about the place begins to bend the air around it. Not enough to notice fully, just enough to feel. Meanwhile, Ben and Susan grow closer. They walk together beneath the canopy of late summer trees. Their conversations a mix of laughter and soft truths. Ben begins to feel a strange balance in her presence, as if her voice steadies him, even when he's uncertain. He tells her more about his writing, about the novel he's working on now, a story shaped by the house on the hill, by the darkness he felt as a child, by the fear that something inside it had never left. Susan listens carefully, her fingers wrapped gently around a paper cup, her eyes thoughtful as dusk settles around them. There's no disbelief in her gaze, only a patient sort of wonder. It draws Ben in more deeply than he expected. Elsewhere, we meet a boy named Mark Petrie, smart, quiet, observant. He reads books about monsters and myths, but not for fright, for knowledge. Mark believes in facts, in patterns, and though he doesn't know it yet, he's the kind of boy who notices the little things others miss. He walks the streets of the lot like a silent watcher, his eyes scanning shadows with innocent precision. And in the town's quieter corners, small things begin to shift. A dog is found dead at the gates of the Marston house. Danny Glick's dog, with his throat torn open. No one can explain it. The body lies stiff on the iron spikes of the gate, as if placed there, as if arranged. Parkins Gillespie, the constable, is called. He observes without expression, draws no conclusions, but in the back of his mind, something curls in unease. A warning, maybe. A memory. Danny Glick, just a boy, is shaken. He doesn't understand what happened, but in his dreams that night, he sees shapes in his window. Not people exactly, but not quite anything else. And in the silence of that same night, beneath a sky turning slowly toward fall, a stranger finally arrives, not with fanfare, not even with footsteps, but with a presence that settles over the Marston house like a cold cloth across the brow of the town. No one sees the door open. No one sees the figure step inside. But somehow, the house knows, and the wind seems to carry a different chill. Ben hears something in the dark, a low thud, far off, like a door closing after too long open. He stands at his window and watches the hill, but there is only shadow, only the stillness of the lot asleep. Yet something has changed, something has begun. The town does not stir. It dreams softly, deeply, not yet knowing that something old has come home, and something newer has been let in. Chapter 4. The Glick Boys. The day begins as all days do in Salem's lot, with the soft shuffle of footsteps across porch steps, the scent of morning coffee rising through open windows, and the small rustle of lives being lived in rhythm. Eva Miller's boarding house. Ben Mears leans over his notebook, his pen scratching thoughtfully at the page. He's been writing more lately. The house on the hill stirring images in his mind like dust lifting in a sunbeam. But as he writes, a feeling lingers. Not quite dread, not quite fear, but a sense that something has shifted. Susan Norton drops by that afternoon. She brings with her the soft scent of lilacs and a breeze that carries autumn's whisper. They talk easily on the porch swing, about books, the antique store, the strange death of Danny Glick's dog. Neither says it aloud, but both feel it. A note of wrongness, low and humming. Not far away, the Glick family prepares for dinner. Danny and his younger brother Ralphie sit at the table in the cozy kitchen, elbows on the wood, voices light. Their parents move about the room, mother humming softly, father slicing bread. It's a scene of ordinary peace, the kind you'd find in any small home on any quiet evening. But that peace won't last. The boys are sent to deliver a school project to their teacher, and they leave just before dusk, the air cooling around them, the sky streaked in lavender and rust. Only Danny comes home. He returns pale and shaken, his voice trembling as he tells his parents that he and Ralphie were walking through the woods near Harmony Hill, and then Ralphie was gone. Just gone. They'd separated for only a moment. A noise, a rustling, Danny turning around and finding nothing but silence where his brother had stood. The town stirs in soft alarm. Sheriff Parkins Gillespie is called. He listens, nods, squints into the shadows of the trees. A search party is formed, lanterns swinging in the growing dark. Voices echo through the woods. "Ralphie! Ralphie Glick!" But there is no answer, only the trees whispering back. Mark Petrie, the clever boy with eyes like mirrors, hears about the disappearance from his classmates the next morning. He listens quietly, filing away the details. He remembers reading once that darkness doesn't always fall fast. Sometimes it creeps in through the floorboards. Ben hears too, and a tightness forms in his chest, not just for the boy, but for what this might mean. the feeling that something ancient has returned, wrapped in ordinary clothes, walking the same sidewalks as everyone else. The next evening, the town gathers again. Lanterns flicker through the trees like fireflies. Voices grow hoarse, and still, no sign of Ralphie. At home, Danny lies in bed, sweating. He shivers beneath his blankets, though the night is warm. He whispers in his sleep, and in the early hours of morning, his window creaks slowly open. He does not scream. The next day, he is pale, waned. His eyes are sunken, his voice soft. A doctor is called, Dr. Cody, who's treated many coughs and colds over the years. He frowns, takes Danny's temperature, listens to his breathing. It's not flu, it's not pneumonia, but whatever it is, it's draining him. Danny sleeps most of the day, and when he wakes, he seems afraid of the light. Still, no one connects the dots. Not yet. The lot is a place of patterns, of tradition, of ordinary belief. And belief is a slow thing to change. But beneath the town, something turns in its sleep. A door has opened, a thread has been pulled, and in the stillness of the night, a figure stands at a window, waiting to be invited in. Chapter 5. One missing, one fading. The days move forward, as they always do, soft and golden on the surface, but beneath that, the ground is beginning to shift. The search for Ralphie Glick continues, though the hope that once lit each lantern grows dimmer. Volunteers still walk the woods, calling his name as the breeze rustles through the high grass. But the calls sound different now, less urgent, more resigned. It's been days, and no trace of the boy has been found. At the Glick home, Danny remains in bed. His skin is pale, almost translucent. His voice a thin whisper. The doctors can't explain it. It's as though the life is slowly leaving him, but in a way that medicine cannot name. His mother stays by his side, holding his hand, wiping his brow. Sometimes, she falls asleep in the chair beside him. And when she does, she doesn't see the window slowly inch open, or the shadow that stretches across the wall. She only wakes when he stirs, his breath shallow, his skin cool. Ben Mears is walking through the town when he hears the news. He's grown familiar with the rhythm of the place again, the way folks greet each other, the quiet between porch steps and parked cars. But now that rhythm is interrupted. People speak more softly. They look over their shoulders. The townsfolk don't talk about what they feel, not directly, but you can see it in the way they turn on the lights a little earlier at night, how they close their curtains a little tighter, how the children are kept closer to home. Ben visits the Glicks, at first just to offer support, but when he sees Danny, he feels a coldness settle into his bones. It's not just that the boy looks sick, it's that he looks emptied. Susan goes with him. She brings flowers and sits with Mrs. Glick for a while, her voice low and soothing. She and Ben walk home afterward beneath a sky bruised with dusk. Their fingers brush. There's something tender there, a closeness built on shared unease. Meanwhile, Matt Burke, the quiet, sharp-eyed schoolteacher, is also paying attention. He's noticed the change in town, the way the Glick boys fell out of step with life so suddenly. He watches, waits, listens. He also reads. Matt knows the patterns of strange stories, even if others don't believe in them. He doesn't say anything yet, but the silence speaks to him. Back in town, Straker's Fine Antiques remains, open, but the windows are always dark. No one ever sees the mysterious Mr. Barlow. Straker insists his partner is still away, but no one can quite remember when he was supposed to arrive. or if he already has. One night near closing, Straker is seen carrying something heavy into the store, long and coffin-shaped, wrapped in thick canvas. He says it's a vintage piece, a restoration project. No one questions it, not out loud. That same night, Danny Glick takes a turn. His breathing slows. His hands grow colder. The doctor is called again, but by the time he arrives, Danny is gone. No scream, no struggle, just a boy lost in sleep, and then stillness. The town mourns quietly. Another loss, another child. And yet, somehow, it doesn't feel like the end of anything. It feels like the beginning. Because as the night deepens, the wind changes direction. The leaves stir differently. And in a nearby window, a pair of eyes, open in the dark, not quite alive, and not quite dead. Something is waking in Salem's lot. Something ancient and patient and very, very hungry. Chapter 6. Restless sleep. The town of Salem's lot lies quiet beneath the velvet dark. The trees are still. The stars hang heavy above. And the houses, quaint and sturdy, glow dimly with lamplight and sighs. It should be peaceful, but the peace is only skin deep. In the Glick household, sorrow settles like dust. Mrs. Glick walks the halls, her robe trailing behind her. She lights a candle and sits by the window. Outside, the air is still, but she swears she hears a tapping, a gentle, rhythmic sound against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. She rises to check the pane. Nothing there. Just her own reflection and the night beyond. But later, in her dreams, she sees a face. Not the face of her living son, Danny, but something colder. Something that smiles without warmth. And his eyes. Oh, his eyes. They glimmer like mirrors in the dark. Ben, meanwhile, is dreaming too. In his sleep, he sees the Marston house, again, towering above the town, like a memory refusing to fade. The windows gleam with unnatural light, and something waits inside, watching him from the highest floor. He wakes with a start, heart pounding, breath shallow. But when he looks out his window toward the hill, he sees only silence. Still, the feeling lingers, like he's not the only one awake. Matt Burke, thoughtful, cautious Matt, also senses a change. He's noticed the patterns. Danny's death, Ralphie's disappearance, the strange quiet that clings to the Glick house, and then Mrs. Glick is found dead in her bed. No signs of pain, no illness, just gone. The doctor can't explain it. 2 deaths in the same family within days. And yet there's no natural cause he can name. The funeral is small, hushed. Neighbours speak in lowered tones, glancing at the Glick home as if it holds a secret they dare not say aloud. And in the quiet of the church, Mark Petrie watches. He doesn't cry. Not out of coldness, but out of something older than fear. Something like knowing. Mark had a dream the night before. He was in the woods, and something cold brushed past his shoulder. Something that whispered his name without breath. At the boarding house, Ben finds himself unable to write. He stares at the blank page, but the words have fled. Not out of laziness, but as if the story he came to tell is already being written in the streets around him. Susan comes by often now. She brings warmth, conversation, and for a little while, they pretend the town hasn't changed. They speak of books, of cities, of dreams. But always, always, there is something just beneath the surface. A tension, a chill, like a thread being pulled from the weave. And one evening, Ben sees something in the window of the Marston house. Just a flicker, a silhouette, a tall figure standing very still, watching. He doesn't tell Susan, not yet. The sun sets slowly over Salem's lot, bleeding light across the sky like a warning in watercolor. Shadows stretch longer, and in the folds between houses and hedges, something begins to move. Parkins Gillespie, the constable, smokes on his porch, watching the street with tired eyes. He's not a man prone to panic, but even he feels it, a change in the town's temperature. As night settles, cozy windows blink out one by one, leaving only a few golden lights burning against the tide of dark. And then, a boy named Mike Ryerson, one of the gravediggers, begins to feel unwell. He complains of weakness, of strange dreams. He says he's cold, even when the stove is on. He doesn't remember the burial clearly. He says it felt like someone was watching from beneath the earth, and now he doesn't sleep well. When he closes his eyes, he hears scratching, not outside the house, but from within the walls. Something is here. It's begun, and no one sees it coming, because it comes like a whisper, like sleep, like a gentle fog rolling in before the rain. Chapter 7. The Unquiet Dead. The town moves gently beneath a pale sky, and from the outside, nothing seems amiss. Children ride bicycles past white picket fences. Screen doors slap shut in the distance, and the scent of apples and dust hangs in the early autumn air. But Salem's lot is no longer a town at rest. It's holding its breath. Ben Mears stands outside the Marston house again. He doesn't go in, not yet. But he studies it from a distance, his eyes tracing the lines of the roof, the lean of its eaves, the way the house seems to tilt ever so slightly toward the earth, like something listening from beneath. He remembers what it felt like inside, the hush, the cold, the pulse in the walls, and he wonders again, was it always evil, or did something move in and make it so? Elsewhere in town, Mike Ryerson, who helped dig Danny Glick's grave, wakes in a cold sweat. His dreams are thick, with soil, with scraping, with breathless whispers under the ground. He tries to go about his day, walks to the cafe, drinks coffee with shaky hands. But he's pale and distant, his eyes unfocused. Something is wrong. By evening, he collapses at the home of Matt Burr. Matt, kind and cautious, takes him in. He gives him a blanket, puts him on the sofa, and watches with growing concern as Mike murmurs in his sleep, twisting beneath the covers. Matt is no fool. He's read stories like this. He's heard the old folk tales, the ones most have long since forgotten. And something about Mike's condition, something about the way his skin has cooled, the way his breath stutters, makes Matt's heart quicken. He sits by the fire, reading, keeping watch as the shadows in the corners stretch long. In the middle of the night, Mike rises, but it's not a natural waking. His eyes open slowly, and they are blank, shiny like dark marbles. He walks toward Matt, step by step, not breathing. Matt, sensing something, wakes, and what he sees stills his heart. Mike is standing in the doorway, his mouth slightly open, his skin chalky, his presence wrong. He doesn't speak, he only watches. Matt whispers his name. No answer. The air in the room changes, thickens, sharpens, a feeling like being underwater. Matt reaches for the small cross hanging above his desk, holding it out without even knowing why. Mike recoils, just slightly, like smoke touched by wind, and then he turns and walks back to the couch. The next morning, Mike is gone. The blanket is rumpled, the front door slightly ajar. Matt calls out into the street, searches for him, but finds nothing. That day, Matt calls Ben. He tells him everything: the dreams, the cold skin, the strange behavior. Ben listens, serious, calm, but beneath his voice, you can hear something tightening. They meet later at Matt's house. Susan comes too, drawn by her growing concern for the town and for Ben. They speak in low voices, a quiet counsel against the night. Together, they begin to trace the threads: Ralphie's disappearance, Danny's death, Mrs. Glick's quiet, passing. Now Mike Ryerson, fading into the shadows. They don't know what it is yet, but they know it's not ordinary. And it started when the Marston house became occupied again. That house, Ben says softly, has always had a darkness in it. That night, Matt stays up late. The cross remains on his nightstand, and in the deep part of the night, he thinks he hears a sound, a soft, slow scratching at the window pane. But when he looks, there's nothing there, just the whispering wind and the knowledge that the town he once knew is slowly slipping into something else. Chapter 8. The gathering storm. The days in Salem's lot are shorter now. Autumn gathers itself in rustling leaves and cool evenings, and with each falling sun, a little more light slips away from the soul of the town. Ben meets with Matt Burke again, this time under the early hush of twilight. They sit in Matt's parlour, the air warm with the scent of tea and old books. The conversation is slow, thoughtful, like two men walking together through a fog, trying to find the shape of something hidden just beyond reach. Matt shares more of what he saw: Mike's strange awakening, his unnatural silence, his sudden disappearance. Ben listens closely. He doesn't dismiss it. He can't. There's something in the air of the lot now, something he can feel pressing against his skin when he walks too close to the Marston house, or when the shadows grow too long. They agree to watch, to gather what they can, to understand, before it's too late. And Ben, with quiet resolve, begins to write again. But not the book he came to write. Instead, he starts a record, a journal of strange happenings, disappearing people, cold rooms, whispers in the dark. Elsewhere in town, Father Donald Callahan kneels in prayer. His church is quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of silence that feels like waiting. He's no stranger to doubt, but lately, that doubt has taken on a shape. Something outside his stained glass windows doesn't belong to the light. The Glick's funeral lingers in his mind, the boy in the casket, and a strange weight that settled over the sanctuary like a shroud not made by hands. He doesn't know it yet, not fully, but his strength will be tested. Susan meets Ben in the park that evening, beneath trees beginning to bare their bones. They walk together, shoulders brushing, talking about the town, the oddness, the thread of something ancient weaving itself quietly through their lives. She trusts him, not just because he's calm or kind, but because he's not pretending. This is normal. Susan is brave in her own way, the kind of bravery that doesn't shout. She wants to help, to understand. And when Ben tells her about Matt's story, about the cross and Mike's lifeless eyes, she doesn't laugh. She nods. There's something happening. They both feel it. And the name that rises again and again is the Marston house. Back at his apartment, Matt prepares for bed, but a chill has taken root in the room. He lights a fire, though the night isn't yet cold enough to need it. Just something to hold the darkness back. And then, a knock at the door. Soft. 3 taps. He hesitates, heart stuttering. Another knock. When he opens it, a boy stands on his porch. It's Mike Ryerson, pale, silent, eyes glinting like damp stone in moonlight. "Can I come in?" The words are flat, empty. Matt feels a weight press down on him. Something ancient in that question. Older than memory. Older than the house. Older than fear. His hand brushes the cross on the nearby table. He says, gently, "No, Mike, not tonight." Mike doesn't move. He doesn't blink. And then, slowly, he turns and walks back into the dark. Matt closes the door, locks it, and stands for a long time with his back against the wood. The fire crackles beside him. Outside, the night stretches wide and silent. In another part of town, a dog is found, lifeless, its eyes open, its body cold. People whisper, children ask questions, and the adults give soft, hollow answers. The constable, Parkins Gillespie, smokes a little more than usual. He says less, and what he does say carries weight. He knows something isn't right, but he's not the type to meddle. Not yet. The townspeople begin to draw inward. They lock their doors earlier. Watch the streets through the cracks in their curtains. The lot is changing, and somewhere up on the hill, the windows of the Marston house glow faintly in the dusk, like eyes that never sleep. Chapter 9. The Invitation. Morning comes, pale and slow, the kind of morning that offers no comfort, only a grey hush that settles like mist over the town. Matt Burke awakens from uneasy sleep. He'd locked his doors, closed the shutters, but still the dream had come. Mike Ryerson at the foot of his bed, his eyes like 2 empty wells. But it wasn't just a dream. Matt knows this. So that morning, he reaches for something steady. He calls the only doctor he trusts, Dr. Jimmy Cody, a friend and former student. They meet for lunch, where Matt speaks with slow precision, carefully laying out what he's seen. Jimmy, a man of science and reason, listens politely, but it's clear he doubts. Not Matt's sincerity, no, never that, but the story's shape, its cold, impossible corners. Still, he agrees to help, to keep an eye out, to watch the town as it begins, quietly, to unravel. And oh, how it unravels. That afternoon, a boy named Mark Petrie walks home from school. Mark is different from the other kids. Clever, quiet, fiercely imaginative. He loves magic tricks, monsters, the old stories whispered in Halloween air. But what he doesn't yet know is that one of those stories is about to knock at his window. That night, Mark is visited by a strange sound, a tapping, faint and rhythmic. At the glass pane above his bed, he peeks out from under the covers, sees nothing, then a whisper. "Mark, let me in." The voice is soft and distant, almost kind, almost familiar. But Mark doesn't move. Something deep within him, a flicker of ancient instinct, tells him to stay still. He grips the plastic cross from his monster model kit, holds it tight, and when he finally dares to look, he sees Danny Glick hovering just outside the window, eyes wide, smiling, but it's not Danny, not anymore. Mark doesn't scream. He holds the cross steady, and the figure outside recoils, drifting backward into the blackness of the night. He breathes, trembling, but safe, for now. Elsewhere in the lot, Susan Norton is growing restless. She wants answers, more than just the whisper of fears. So she makes a decision. She'll go to the Marston house, alone. Ben doesn't know yet. She tells her mother she's visiting a friend, and with determined steps, she begins the long walk up the hill. The house looms above her like a forgotten castle, windows dark, the front porch sagging like an old sigh. She knocks. No answer. The door, to her surprise, is unlocked, and slowly, carefully, she steps inside. It's cold. Still. The air feels thick, as if the house is breathing around her. She walks through empty rooms, each one coated in dust, each corner darker than it should be. Then she hears a sound. Footsteps above or below. Before she can decide, a voice calls out. Soft, measured. It's Richard Straker. He appears in the hallway like a shadow stepping into shape. Polite, charming, too calm. He speaks with formality, guiding her into a sitting room, asking why she's come. Susan is clever. She plays along. She asks about antiques, about history. Straker smiles, but the air in the room grows colder. She senses something, beneath the words, behind his eyes. But she stays, asks more, tries to piece together the puzzle. And as she sits there, the sky outside darkens. Later that night, Ben receives a call. It's Mark Petrie's parents. They're worried. Mark won't sleep. He's pale, and he won't let them near the window. Ben hangs up and calls Matt, and together they agree. They must act. The pieces are too many now. The Glick boys, Mike Ryerson, the shadows in Matt's home, Mark's visitor, Susan still missing, and, always, the Marston house. They make a plan. They will go. Soon. But for now, the night closes in. The town grows quieter, and in the hills above, the lights in the house flicker, and one by one, go out. Chapter 10. The watchers in the dark evening falls once again over the lot, as it always does. Quiet, unannounced, like a guest who never truly left. Ben Mears is pacing. His thoughts tangle around Susan's absence, his heart tugging in too, many directions at once. He hasn't heard from her since yesterday, and something doesn't feel right. He heads to the Norton home, knocking gently. Anne Norton answers the door, her eyes tired, her voice tinged with worry. Susan, she tells him, hasn't come home. Ben tries to hide the panic behind soft questions. Where did she say she was going? Did she take her car? Did she leave a note? But none of the answers help. They only confirm what he fears. She's missing, and he knows exactly where she went. The Marston house. It always circles back to that place, like a well at the center of a dry town, drawing all things inward. He calls Matt Burke, who's still weak from the stress of the past days. Matt is resting in the hospital now, his heart giving out not from illness, but from fear pressed too long against the walls of his chest. He tells Ben to be careful, to be certain, to wait if he must. But Ben knows there is no more time. As night rises, he heads up the hill alone. He doesn't go through the front. He circles the property, eyes scanning the windows, his breath short and sharp against the cold. The house watches him. He can feel it, as if it knows he's come not as a guest, but as a challenger. He doesn't enter. Not yet. Not tonight. Instead, he leaves quietly and goes to Mark Petrie. Mark opens the door with eyes wide, still holding the plastic cross in his hand. Ben kneels down, voice gentle. He tells Mark. He believes him. Every word. The boy's shoulders ease. For the first time, an adult isn't dismissing the shadows. Ben asks him what he saw. Mark describes Danny at the window, hovering, smiling, calling softly, and the cold that seeped into the room like fog. Ben nods. He doesn't explain away the horror. He holds space for it. Together, they make a plan. Meanwhile, Jimmy Cody visits Matt in the hospital. Matt speaks with clarity, though he looks pale. He tells Jimmy everything again. Mike's strange return, the voice in the dark, the cold touch of something wrong. Jimmy still doubts, but something in Matt's eyes makes him stay a little longer. And later that night, as Jimmy walks back to his car beneath the sodium streetlights, he feels it too. The town is changing. Back in the shadows of the Marston house, Susan lies in darkness. She's alive, but no longer alone. Something has touched her, not with violence, but with a terrifying softness. A whisper, a presence, a draw she cannot resist. And deep in the cellar of the house, beyond locked doors and stone walls, a figure stirs. Not quite asleep, not yet fully awake. His name is Barlow, but he has not shown his face, only his will. The town is unraveling, thread by thread, and while the sun still shines each day, its light seems thinner, waning, as if the lot itself is dimming under. A heavy invisible hand. Ben returns home, his hands shaking. He writes down everything. Dates, names, strange sightings, whispers from children, missing pets, cold rooms, unexplained deaths. It's not fiction anymore. It's a record, and the time for watching is ending. Soon, it will be time to fight. But, for now, the wind blows softly through the trees, and the house on the hill waits, patient and still. Chapter 11. Quiet Alliances. The morning is slow to rise over the lot. Clouds hang heavy in the sky, muting the light like a soft grey veil. Ben Mears stands at his window, a cup of coffee cooling in his hands. He hasn't slept. Not really. He's been thinking of Susan, of the Marston house, of the strange and delicate web tightening around the town. And he's thinking of the boy, Mark Petrie. There is something in Mark that lingers in Ben's mind, not just fear, but understanding, an old kind of knowing that many adults have forgotten. Later that morning, Ben meets with Jimmy Cody. They sit together in Matt Burke's hospital room, the atmosphere quiet, the air humming with unease. Ben lays out the truth, as clearly and calmly as he can. He tells Jimmy about the vampires, the eyes at the window, the fading lives. Jimmy doesn't laugh, he doesn't scoff. Instead, he listens, really listens. And when the silence settles, Jimmy says something small but deeply important. I believe you. The words don't ring out loudly. They fall like a warm blanket over cold shoulders. A pact is formed between Ben, Matt, and Jimmy. A circle of trust, woven not by proof, but by the weight of what they've seen. They agree. The town is in danger. They will investigate, prepare, and act. No more waiting. Meanwhile, Mark Petrie returns to school. But he's different now. Quieter, more distant. He walks the halls like a boy carrying something fragile and secret inside his chest. At home, he begins to make preparations. He studies the old stories, the ones from his monster books, the ones adults forget to believe. He sharpens stakes from broom handles, wraps them in cloth. He makes a cross from 2 wooden rulers, and each night he places them beneath his bed, just in case. Back at the hospital, Matt receives word from the coroner. Mike Ryerson's body, the one that had vanished, has not been found. But there are whispers, A man seen walking near the Harmony Hill Cemetery after dark. A man pale as snow, eyes gleaming like marbles. The pieces continue to form their slow, chilling shape. That evening, Jimmy and Ben decide to do something bold. They'll go to the cemetery, to Danny Glick's grave. They want to know, truly know, if it's real. They wait until after sunset, moving carefully through the high grass and moss-covered stones, the flashlight beams soft and narrow like threads of moonlight. They reach the grave. The soil, freshly turned just days ago, looks undisturbed. Still, quiet, but they begin to dig. Their hands move slowly, almost reverently. Each shovelful of earth feels like a page turning in a story they don't want to read, but must. And then they reach the coffin. Jimmy opens it. Inside, Danny lies still. Too still. Pale. Perfect. Not a trace of decay. And as they watch, his eyes flutter open. Not all the way. Just a sliver. Enough to see the gleam. The hunger. Ben slams the lid shut. They bury the boy again, but not out of fear, out of respect for what must come next. Now there is no doubt, no question. Vampires walk in Jerusalem's lot, and they are growing in number. As they leave the cemetery, the moon hidden behind drifting clouds, Ben feels the weight of what lies ahead. It will not be easy. There will be pain. There may be loss. But the line has been drawn, and they will not run. Chapter 12. Into the shadows. The night air in the lot is colder now. It moves like breath through the streets, curling beneath doors, slipping through cracks. In the Norton home, the telephone rings. Anne answers with a voice still raw from worry. It's the sheriff, Parkins Gillespie. He's asking about Susan. Her absence has been noticed. Anne's heart tightens. She's been holding it together with routine, but the threads are fraying. The sheriff doesn't push too hard. He's not a man of many words, but his silence carries weight. Something's not right. He knows it. He just doesn't know what. Elsewhere, Ben Mears walks the length of his apartment. Each step slow, each thought heavy. Susan. He can't stop picturing her, smiling, brave, walking, alone up the hill toward that terrible house. He doesn't even know if she's still herself, and that not knowing is what haunts him most. He meets with Jimmy Cody once more. Together, they plan what comes next. They'll return to the Marston house, not just to search, not just to confirm, but to end it, to find the thing that's feeding this sickness, this ancient hunger moving beneath the skin of the town. But they'll need help. They'll need Mark. That night, Ben visits the Petrie home again. Mark lets him in without a word. He leads Ben to his room, shows him the hidden supplies, the wooden stakes, the homemade crosses, the carefully folded pages of research. Ben is moved. This boy, barely a teenager, has seen more than most adults ever will, and he has faced it without flinching. Ben explains the plan. Mark nods. I want to come, he says simply. Ben hesitates, but in the quiet of Mark's room, with the shadows, soft against the walls, he realizes Mark is already part of this. He always was. Meanwhile, the town itself begins to dim, street by street. Small things vanish. A store closes early. A window remains shuttered. Mrs. Sawyer down the lane stops answering her phone. The McDougalls haven't been seen in 2 days. It happens subtly, like a slow eclipse. People stop talking to one another. They draw their curtains tight. They pray in whispers. The town is falling asleep, not peacefully, but under a spell. And from the heart of it, the house on the hill watches. It sees all, knows all. Down in the hospital, Matt Burke wakes from a restless nap. He senses something near his bed. Not a person, not a sound, a presence. He doesn't call for help. He simply turns on the light, and when nothing is there, he exhales, but he doesn't relax. He knows it's coming soon. The final reckoning. He calls Ben the next morning. "Whatever you're going to do," he says quietly, "do it soon." So they prepare. Jimmy gathers supplies. Ben sharpens stakes, wraps crosses. Mark writes a note for his parents, folds it under his pillow, and then the morning passes into afternoon, and afternoon into dusk. As the sun fades, they set out together, Ben, Jimmy, and Mark. 3 souls against the dark. They do not speak much. Their silence is a kind of prayer, a vow. They climb the hill to the Marston house. Its windows are black. Its porch sags like a tired mouth. Ben knocks once, twice. No answer. Jimmy tests the door. It creaks open with surprising ease. And so they enter. Inside, the air is thick, heavy, not with dust, but with something deeper, like the breath of something ancient and waiting. They search, room by room, footsteps soft on old wood. In the parlor, they find signs, a blanket folded on the floor, a woman's scarf, Susan's scarf. Ben picks it up with shaking hands. He doesn't speak. In the basement, the air is colder still. They descend slowly, hearts pounding. They find coffins, not just one, several, empty. For now, and then, a sound, soft, behind them. They turn, and from the shadows, something moves. Chapter 13. Beneath the floorboards, the cellar breathes. It's not a sound, but a feeling. A cold hum that rises from the stone walls, curling around the ankles of those who dare step inside. Ben, Jimmy, and young Mark stand still, frozen not by fear, but by knowing. Something is here. Not close, perhaps, but not far either. The coffins lie open, as if waiting. Empty, but lined with the unmistakable imprint of bodies recently lain there. The air is thick with old secrets, earth and rot, iron and sorrow. Jimmy moves forward, carefully. The flashlight in his hand stutters slightly as he lowers it into one of the coffins. Nothing. But the stillness feels wrong, unsettled, like a breath held too long. And then, from the far side of the basement, beneath the wooden slats of a warped, half-rotted floor, a sound, a whisper, a rustle, the quiet shift of something waking. Ben motions for silence. Mark holds the stake tightly in his hand, his knuckles pale. They step forward slowly, hearts echoing like quiet drums. A trap door is found, half hidden beneath a pile of old boards. Jimmy pries it open. The smell rises first. Damp earth, sweet and sharp, like leaves left too long in rain. A staircase leads downward, not made of stone or wood, but roughly carved into the earth itself. A tunnel. Ben goes first. The darkness presses close. Mark follows, then Jimmy. Their flashlights cast long, flickering shadows along the narrow walls. At the end of the passage, a small room, barely more than a hollowed chamber, opens before them. And there, lying in a coffin of black, is a man. Not quite a man. Barlow. He looks like marble carved into menace. Skin too pale, too still. The faintest curve of a smile rests upon his lips. Ben feels the weight of centuries pressing in. They do not speak. They move with quiet resolve. Ben raises the stake. Jimmy steadies his hand. And just as the stake is about to fall, a scream. Not from Barlow, but from behind them. The trapdoor above slams shut. Footsteps, movement. A shadow passes across the narrow beam of light. They are not alone. Someone has followed. Ben looks at Jimmy. Jimmy looks at Mark. Time is splintering. Do it, Ben whispers. Jimmy drives the stake. Barlow's eyes fly open. Not with panic, but with fury. His mouth moves silently, words lost in dust. And then, stillness. True stillness. The coffin shudders. The air seems to exhale. Ben leans back, gasping. Mark kneels beside him. Jimmy turns toward the tunnel, just in time to see the flicker of motion vanish beyond the beam of light. Someone ran, but Barlow is gone. Above, the house groans, timbers sighing like an old beast disturbed from slumber. They rise, climbing from the basement, passing through silence that now feels oddly hollow. Lighter. The house is different. Not safe, never safe, but no longer pulsing with darkness. Outside, dawn is beginning to touch the edges of the sky. Ben looks back at the Marston house. It doesn't seem to loom anymore. Just a house. Empty now, but Susan is still missing. And the war isn't over. Only one battle is done. For now, they rest. They must. The darkness will return. In whispers, in dreams, in the lonely corners of a town that's learning to forget. But Ben Mears won't forget, and neither will Mark. Chapter 14. What remains? The dawn in Jerusalem's lot feels unfamiliar. It rises slowly, like a hand hesitating on the curtain, letting in the light one slender strand at a time. And in that quiet greyness, Ben Mears stands before the house, on the hill, the Marston house, no longer looming, no longer alive. Its windows are empty sockets. Its door stands ajar, as if unsure whether to let anything else inside ever again. Jimmy, Mark, and Ben return to town with hearts heavy and footsteps slow. They've ended something. That much is true, but what remains is almost harder to bear. Etty, the hospital. Matt Burke sits up in bed, his eyes sharp despite the weight of fever and fatigue. Ben tells him what happened, about the cellar, about Barlow, about the stillness that followed. Matt listens in silence. He doesn't interrupt, and when Ben finishes, Matt simply nods. "It's not over," he says softly. And it isn't. Because even as the town blinks into morning, there are still missing people. Still houses dark in the daylight. Still hearts beating with fear they don't yet understand. Susan Norton has not returned. Ben tries to hold on to hope, the way one might try to hold mist in their hands. He remembers her laugh, the tilt of her smile, the way she walked barefoot across the grass that first night. Mark rests quietly in his room that day. He reads through old notebooks, drawing diagrams and maps of the town. He writes names, those lost, those turned, those they still might save. He doesn't cry, not yet, but his hands tremble as he writes. Ben visits the constable next, Sheriff Parkins. Gillespie listens to the story, the whole truth this time, about vampires, about the coffins, about the monster beneath the town. He doesn't mock. He lights a cigarette, stares out the window for a long moment. Then he says, in his usual dry voice, "This town's seen worse. Maybe not this exactly, but close enough." Ben can't tell if he believes him, but the sheriff's tone carries a weight of resignation, like someone who knows towns like this don't stay clean forever. The next day, Jimmy Cody dies. It happens suddenly, quietly, a booby trap, set by Barlow perhaps. A final cruel echo from a creature who knew the end was near. Ben is crushed. He doesn't scream. He doesn't run. He just sits for a long time, his head bowed, as the sun falls in thin strips across the floor. Loss is no longer a shadow. It is a room he walks through every day, and still, the vampires remain. Some have fled. Some hide in cellars and barns, waiting for the night. Ben knows they'll return, unless something more is done. So he and Mark begin again. They draw maps, search records, speak to the few remaining allies. Matt, the sheriff, a silent handful of townsfolk who've seen enough to no longer doubt. By the week's end, they have a list of homes to check, a list of names, a list of hopes. And in the stillness of one night, Ben dreams of Susan. She stands at the edge of a field, her hair lifted by the wind, her eyes full of quiet sorrow. She doesn't speak, but in the dream, Ben knows what she means. He wakes with tears in his eyes and a name on his lips, Susan, and he knows what must come next. He must find her, even if she's gone, even if she's changed. He must see her and tell her that she mattered, that she was loved, that she still is. Chapter 15, The Quiet Goodbye. Evening gathers again in the lot. It arrives without fanfare, slipping between the houses like a sigh that no one quite heard. The town is quieter now, not in a peaceful way, but like a clock that's lost its rhythm, ticking only when no one is listening. Ben Mears stands at the edge of Harmony Hill. The grass moves softly around his boots, and beyond the slope lies the cemetery. Peaceful, still, but not empty. Mark stands beside him. The boy says nothing. He just watches as Ben scans the graves, his gaze moving slowly over the markers etched with familiar names. Ben is looking for one thing now: closure, or something like it. They've tracked the signs carefully. New earth, disturbed stones, subtle hints left by those who no longer walk by day. And now, they believe she's here. Susan. Ben doesn't speak her name aloud. It lives behind his lips like a prayer too tender to disturb. Together, he and Mark descend into the shadows of the cemetery. They move with purpose, but not fear. They've walked this path long enough now to know that dread is a companion, but not a master. They find the grave, half hidden, the stone newly placed, the date still glinting faintly with fresh carving. Susan Norton. Ben kneels beside it, his hand brushing the cold stone. No coffin was ever buried here. He knows that now. This is just a name, a placeholder for a life interrupted. The real Susan, whatever remains of her, is somewhere near. They wait for nightfall. It comes gently. The sun slips away like a mother leaving a child's room, soft-footed and reluctant. And in the cool hush of night, Ben sees her. She appears not far off, a figure moving slowly among the stones, as though remembering. She is pale. Her dress moves like a ghost's whisper. Her eyes catch the moonlight, and they are no longer the eyes he once loved. But still, She is beautiful. Mark moves beside him, stake in hand. But Ben lifts a hand. Wait. He steps forward. Susan sees him. She tilts her head. Her voice, when it comes, is quiet. Ben. It isn't a greeting, it's a remembering. A flicker of what once was. Ben doesn't flinch. He looks at her. Really looks. I came for you, he says softly. She smiles, but her smile is not hers. It belongs to something else now. She steps forward. Come with me. Her voice is sweeter than wind in trees, and for one terrible, tender moment, Ben wants to. He wants to forget the world, forget the town, forget the war they've waged in silence. He wants to be hers, to vanish. But then, he remembers her laughter, the way she stood in sunlight that first afternoon, barefoot, grinning, so vividly alive. And he knows that version of Susan is gone. He nods. Once. I'm sorry, he whispers. And then he does what he must. Mark turns his face away. When it is over, the night feels colder, emptier, but also strangely still, like something sacred has been laid to rest. Ben kneels beside her again. The body, now quiet, lies where she stood. He places his hand on her forehead. I loved you, he says. And somewhere, in whatever place her true spirit may have gone, he hopes she hears it. They bury her then, not because they must, but because it feels right. Mark helps, silent and steady. And when it's done, they leave the cemetery as the stars begin to blink into view. A soft wind stirs the trees, and in the distance, the town lies sleeping, not safe, not whole, but no longer quite. So haunted. Chapter 16. Ashes and wind. There's a hush over the lot. It's not the silence of peace, but the quiet that follows something vast. A storm passed through. A darkness moved among the living. And now, what remains is ash. Ben and Mark pack their things, not quickly, but with the kind of thoughtful calm that comes after deep loss and long nights. There are no crowds to say goodbye, no tearful farewells. The town itself barely stirs. Many have left. Some fled before the worst arrived. Others vanished in the dark, and a few, a silent few, remain behind, in boarded houses, waiting for dawns that now arrive emptier than before. Ben doesn't look back as they drive, but Mark does. He watches the edges of the lot fade into the trees. He watches the steeple disappear. He watches the Marston house grow small in the rear window until it's just a smudge against the sky. They drive for hours, out into the wide country, past small towns, past hills and rivers where nothing stirs but the wind. They don't speak much. Sometimes grief doesn't need words. It lives in the silence between breaths, in the glance shared across a car seat, in the way hands rest quietly at the edge of motion. They find an old cabin. It sits beside a shallow lake, the kind of place made for trout fishing, for slow mornings and black coffee. Ben knows it well. It belonged to his father. It's far enough from everything. Quiet, forgotten. And here, they begin to plan, because it's not over. The town still lives, in the shadows, in the soil, in the empty eyes of those turned and hidden. And one day, that darkness will rise again. Ben knows this. Mark knows it too. But now, they rest. They repair the cabin, stockpile supplies, write down everything they remember. They draw new maps, sketch out the town's heart like doctors preparing for surgery. And when night falls, they sit outside beneath the stars, wrapped in blankets, listening to the gentle sounds of the forest. Mark asks, "Do you think it'll come back?" Ben nods. "Yes. And us?" Ben looks at the boy. His eyes are tired but warm. "We'll be ready." And they will. Because this isn't just a horror story. It's a story of memory, of wounds and scars, of hope that keeps burning even when the lights go out. In time, Ben begins to write again. Not fiction, not yet, but the truth. He writes the story of Salem's Lot, not for fame, not for fear, but because some stories must be told, and perhaps someday someone will read it and know what waits beneath the quiet streets of an old New England town with secrets buried deeper than any grave. Until then, the night is still, and the cabin by the lake is filled with the soft hush of two hearts healing. Now, my dear sleepy soul, we come to the final reflection, the soft landing at the end of our long, gentle journey through Salem's Lot. Let this moment be like the final pages of a cherished letter, folded carefully, sealed with quiet thought, and left beside your pillow as you drift towards sleep. Final reflection. Salem's Lot is a story of shadows, but also a story of love, of memory, of home, and of how deeply darkness can grow when no one dares to light a candle. Stephen King, the author of this haunting tale, wrote it not just to scare us, though yes, the story chills and lingers, but to explore something older and deeper. What happens when the places we trust start to decay from within? Jerusalem's Lot is a small town like any other, a place of porches and paperboys, of Sunday services and summer fairs. But beneath its familiar rhythms, something ancient takes root. And it's not just the supernatural that haunts the town, it's also the silence, the turning away, the refusal to see what's slowly growing darker, house by house, heart by heart. At its core, this story is about loss. Ben Mears loses not just love, but also the innocence of returning to a place that shaped him. Mark Petrie loses his childhood to a war he never asked for, and the town itself, well, it loses everything because it refuses to believe that the impossible can sometimes be true. But alongside all that sorrow, there is also resilience. Because Salem's Lot is not just a town that dies. It is a place where people fight, where love keeps moving forward, even when it's wounded, where truth, no matter how terrifying, is still better than denial. Stephen King's brilliance lies in how he weaves the terrifying with the tender. He gives us monsters, yes, but he also gives us humanity, fragile and flickering like candlelight, in a deep, cold room. He reminds us that the real horror isn't always the creature in the dark, but what happens when no one looks for it, when no one speaks its name, when we let the rot fester, because it's easier than facing what must be faced. And yet, he also reminds us that love can be braver than fear, that a grieving man and a young boy can walk into a haunted house armed, with nothing but resolve. That friendship and hope can still burn, even in a town gone cold. So as you drift now into your own quiet night, let this story linger softly in your dreams, not as something frightening, but as a gentle reminder that even in the darkest places, there are people who fight for the light. That silence can be broken, that fear can be faced, and that love, quiet, steady, enduring love, can be the stake that holds the shadows at bay. Close your eyes, darling. Listener, let the town of Salem's lot fade into the mist. The roads are empty now, the houses quiet. The Marston house no longer watches. All is still, and you are safe. Good night.